Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering Series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
Creativity. It is the essence of creating something new, either a new idea, concept, or method. Innovation is using creative essence to enhance the performance of a process, person, team, or organization. Both these elements are ingrained in the world of design and technology. In fact, the world of design and technology are facing changes like never before. Numerous driving forces to this change include rapid globalization, increasing competition, diversity among consumers, and availability to new forms of technology and design. And that's why, in this episode, we interact with a human centered innovator, Soumitra Bhat, Director of Innovation Consulting at Salesforce. He shares his journey and experience of being a designer and his passion for crafting an inspiring vision, create company wide alignment, and enabling creative collaboration. On our journey for discovering designeering, we get into conversation with him on imagination to innovation. Hello, Soumitra. Welcome to Avantika Designeering Series podcast show. We welcome you to the show, and we are really excited to talk to you today about innovation at workplace and at Salesforce.
Thanks, Rohit. Delighted to be here. I have a long association with MIT, especially the design school. So yes, I'm looking forward to this session and sharing what I can on this topic.
Super. So to start with, Soumitra, to break the ice, to make this new normal more acceptable, it will obviously require an extra effort. And I wish to ask, how has work from home been for you? Is there any new way of work that you have adopted?
So in new normal, I think it's been very interesting for me personally because being in innovation, running a studio here for design and innovation, we've kind of believed always that space is a team member, right? And we are very attached to that studio space with the whiteboards, etc. So when we all had to work remotely and nobody could come into the studio again, initially we were, I would say, a bit concerned about it in the sense of how it was going to work out, whether we were going to be able to continue with our engagements, projects, etc. But I think now that we are 4 months into it, we are pleasantly surprised because technology has caught up in phenomenal ways. We're able to collaborate remotely using many tools that simulate, if not completely replace, but simulate to a great extent, the kind of stuff that we were doing offline in the studio. So it's been great. I think the biggest challenge has been to find a place for ourselves in our houses. And, I'm in Mumbai and my team is in Mumbai as well, most of them. And houses are not that big here. And also people with families, you have to create that space and environment for yourself. I think that was a challenge initially for me as well. I have a 6-year-old daughter. And having her full time in the house running around that's expected. How do I shield myself a little bit or create a space for myself with that? So first 2 months, I think we got a hang of that, and now I think we are almost looking at probably going remote for sure till the end of December as Salesforce as a whole. And my team per se, I'm kind of dreaming of a full remote way of working where we only meet for socials, and otherwise we could be anywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a situation, and that's the new normal that each one of us are going through. I face similar kind of an experience. The other thing that interests me before we get into your journey and the entire uh, distance that you've covered now, the question is, how do you juggle your life, work, and keep up with what's happening in the industry? So how do you divide your time between all of these things?
Great question. When I talk about my work, I actually think that a large part of what I do or where I create value is actually by participating in what people call life, industry, and the work. Because often, I keep telling this to people that the kind of work that I do, or that we all do, in fact, as innovators or designers, we are constantly situated at the intersection of these multiple worlds, right? And the basic problem is that people have separated these, so they think of work as separate from life, and that life needs should not or do not, influence what you need at work. And I think all that is changing, and this is a great moment of realization with this lockdown and work from home, that indeed, life, what happens in life is not separate from what happens at work, and the requirements from one can feed into the other, and they need to kind of work together. So I think in my case, that's always been the view, in the sense that I need to participate in life, in industry. I need to understand what's going around, and a great way for me to do that is to just observe. I think that I spend a lot of my time doing that, in figuring out where what's happening, right? In the sense, okay, we have this new change in terms of COVID, where the whole context has changed. What are people finding important today in this new context than what they were before? And if that's changed, if some things like probably safety and, obviously those obvious things, if that's become top of mind important, then what are people doing? What are new ways and new signals that you can see around us, of people trying to get more of that for themselves? And there's this whole, you could go deeper into social distancing and as a behavior, and then look at particular industries of how social distancing plays out in those industries. And it's very surprising. I mean, what's happening in banking with social distancing is very different and interesting from what's happening in retail, which we all are more familiar with, probably as consumers ourselves. So that's essentially how I look at it. And then once you and of course, there's no limit to how much you can learn about a particular industry. I think what's important is the perspective that you bring and the intention. And I think I'm talking more about the intention, in which it's more about understanding how life, industry, work, etc., all these spheres that we divide ourselves into, how they work together actually. And if you take a human centered lens, how can you spot new signals and behaviors and make sense of them, and then apply them to something that you create for the future?
Absolutely. In fact, moving from this juggling that you do to, let's talk about your journey from being a student at IIT Guwahati to Salesforce today. So you moved from the world of technology to user interface, being an entrepreneur in middle for some time, to innovation consulting today. In fact, you are also a aspiring estate planner. So tell us more about all of this. How do you connect the dots looking behind?
When I was in school, I think this is before, IIT and everything, my I had no idea about design or anything like that. I think my sister was more creative, and she was, studying to be a commercial artist and so forth. And when I look at her even today, and the kind of skill that she has in terms of art and visualization, I think I'm nowhere close. And at that point also, it was more so because I was like, if I'm, you know I don't think this can be a career for me. At least that was my understanding of design or creative. And I was essentially working my way towards becoming a mechanical engineer. And but I was said that I wanted to do what I wanted to study in IIT, because somehow that environment really pulled me into it, and I was not very, if I did not do that, then my backup plan was to do some English literature in St. Xavier's, Mumbai. And somehow it worked out. I mean, there's this whole exam, and then there's a counseling session where you pick your, depending on your rank, you get to pick institutes and courses. So there's like almost like a queue over there. And then I had an interesting option. My rank was, somewhere in the bottom middle. And um, there were mechanical somewhere, etc. And when I went for the counseling in IIT Bombay, actually, I still remember I'd gone in with the intention. I told back home to my parents that, hey, you guys don't need to come with me. I know what I'm going to do, which is this mechanical engineering. So don't worry. There's I just have to fill in my name, etc. And when I actually go there, I spent some time with some professors, and there was this very old gentleman from IIT Guwahati who was the head of the design department, Professor Natkarni, at that time. So I spoke with him a little bit, and I said, okay, tell me what this design about. And he was like, well, it's a course where you imagine, and you use various methods to visualize, and you actually create some products and things like that. I had this was I had 2 minutes with him, right? So this was what I heard. And then I went to a professor of chemistry after that, because one of the options in front of me was MSc in chemistry. And the gentleman told me that, Soumitra, MSc is not the end of the road in chemistry. Unless you do a PhD, I think, you'll not get any value out of real chemistry. And after listening to that, I did a self check with myself, saying, am I really that motivated with chemistry? Like, what is happening here? And I took a decision on the fly that I was going to go to Guwahati, IIT Guwahati, all the way away from Mumbai, and study something that nobody in my family ever understood. And I think they still struggle to understand today. And that I certainly didn't have any idea about, which was design. So that was my starting point with design. Really, I went all the way to the other end of the country to study it in an institute which had a very new program, unlike any others at that time. And like you said, it's a program that's situated in the middle of engineering and technology, one of the best universities in the country for that. And that experience was amazing in the sense that everything that people, it was 4 years that I spent without any uh, baggage from what design should be, or what design education is about, what are the topics that need to be covered, etc. And I just remember the 4 years as a very creative phase with great friendships across these multiple disciplines, and just a sense that, hey, this is a creative pursuit, we can do whatever, and it doesn't have to conform to any kind of definition. And it worked both ways, in the sense that after 4 years I didn't know whether I should call myself a designer. And that's obvious with many of my batchmates today, who are excellent investment bankers and all these other professionals in other disciplines. But really what connects us, all of us, even today, is this identity of being the creative people who can take initiative and get things together, get people together, get resources together, and make something out of it. And I think that's a great definition and identity that we were able to create for ourselves over the 4 years. I was, even then, at that point, passionate about design, in the sense of its more conventional kind of definition of making some products or something. So that's why I went into a career in UX and UI design. Started with enterprise software, then worked for UX consulting. Learned a lot there, in terms of how, at that point, this is 2005, so this is when the internet was uh, restarted or rebooted in terms of what people and companies could do on the internet in terms of commerce, etc. So e-commerce, search, all these kinds of things were just starting then. And so that was a great time to be a UX consultant, because I got to work on many projects of multiple sizes across the world to understand how people and businesses were really thinking about the power of the internet and trying to fit it into their mindset, or their beliefs of business. So I did that for a while, learned a lot, and but after that, about 2 years, I actually got bored of the computer screen, because I thought the world was, life was more than the computer screen, and I didn't see myself being someone who spent most of their time on the computer screen as the primary medium for my expression. So with that, then I decided to expand my horizons a little bit, and I did a master's program in interaction design, which was with a focus not on the screen, but really looking at interactions as interactions with environment. So I learned a lot there as well, in terms of how products, how you can design products for particular interactions, how services get designed, what experience is about. And it was a very philosophical place called Delft where I did that. So again, I learned a lot over there.
Hey, do you know Salesforce offers an education reimbursement program that reimburses employees' tuition fees and books up to $5,000 per year?
By the end of it, I really wanted to go back and do something on my own, in the sense I had a sense of what kind of problems I wanted to work on. After that, I was still, reasonably young, almost very young, I think. And so I came back to India and I started Userinov. Now, Userinov was a service design. Now I know what to call it, but at that point of time, I just called it a strategic design consulting company. So I was very clear that I wanted to be a consulting company. I wanted it to be about strategy and not just execution. And I wanted to have that whole systems view of things, rather than just a particular screen or like the e-commerce strategy or something like that. So that was the genesis of Usernov in 2007. And with Usernov, I had a chance again to learn a lot, and not just in terms of the practice of design. I had some great customers across healthcare, retail, travel, and I was surprised to meet that most of these clients, who are now even better friends, came from non-design backgrounds, but they really understood the value of experience, of service, and just how open they were to new ideas around how we should think about creating this value for their customers. So I think that was very, it was luck, you can say, for me to have that. Even as I'm sure many of you have, I don't know how much you're aware of, but at that point, at 10 years before, more than 10 years before now, selling strategy and design together was very difficult, because there was no market for it, in the sense that it was, you had to educate people a lot. So as a small startup consulting company trying to make a dent, I would consider myself lucky to have exclusively worked on such projects even in that time, and which has contributed a lot to what I do today. um, so then uh, yeah, so, and of course, because it was running my own company, so I think there was a whole different set of learning around entrepreneurship and how do you run a services business. And if you're looking at I think, I keep reflecting back on what is this entrepreneurial learning that I got out of that whole experience. And I think the first thing that I would say now is that, you may think anything about yourself if you are the entrepreneur and the business, that everything is good and I have so many problems and that's why I'm not able to deliver, etc. But your customers, they don't really care. And if you expect them to think from your perspective, your expectation may not be fulfilled all the time, because obviously, I mean, we have empathy, but not everybody has empathy, and also, it's not warranted every time as well. So I think that was my biggest learning, in the sense, when we say entrepreneurial, or when I think of entrepreneurial or hiring entrepreneurial people, I don't just mean people who take initiative. I mean people who take initiative in the face of getting almost no recognition or success or even understanding from the people that they are, trying to create something to benefit. And that for me was my biggest learning, in terms of how do you still continue to plow through that environment and still succeed or still produce good work. If you're able to do that, I think that's a great sign of being entrepreneurial. And then after Userinov, I was, at that time, I was visiting faculty at many design schools, including MIT in Pune, where me and my wife Caroline, we were together, taking courses on interaction design, with product design, retail design, etc. And we shaped a little bit of the master's program there on interaction design. And that kind of, so I was always interested in education. It was a great way for me to learn as well, in terms of clarifying my own ideas. And then finally in Mumbai, there was a chance for me to lead education program for a new design school that was just coming up at that point, ISD Parsons. And I joined there. I worked there for 3 years. It was again a great experience, building something from scratch in an institution with a big vision and great exposure. So I was director of a postgraduate program on design innovation, which was the first of its kind again. It really gave me the platform to create something that connected with my experiences as a designer, which was multidisciplinary, no fixed definition, always focused on delivering value and so forth. And how do you distill all of that learning and those tools and techniques into an 11-month program for people to be successful in their careers or in entrepreneurship? And along with that, a couple of other things in terms of my experience with working with startups, and as an entrepreneur myself, I set up the Microsoft Venture Accelerator in ISDI at that time, looking at helping startups with design. And of course, operating the whole program from a business perspective. So not just looking at the academics, but also the whole, marketing, etc. The stuff that I already learned as an entrepreneur, it was applied again in ISDI. So that was for 3 years. Learned a lot there again about how to run, and it's not really about design, but how do you run a program in this sense? How do you conceptualize it? How do you market it? How do you operate it? And the whole gamut of experiences around that. And then I felt the need to kind of move back closer to technology, because that was always, I guess, technology is my material. Like an artist's material is paint, mine is technology. I am still hands-on in programming. I develop some prototypes of here and there when I get some ideas. And not that I'm very good at it, but I need to be connected or stay connected to this medium and really get my hands dirty from time to time. And that's when I found a place for myself and what I was thinking and doing in Salesforce as an innovation consultant with them, helping their customers, the biggest customers in India. That's what I look at, to helping them innovate on their customer experience, customer value, and topics like that, using CRM, which is the tool that Salesforce sells, right, or makes, and it's a leader in that space. And the idea really is that there's a best in class tool here. how can we help our customers really unlock that value and create those experiences that they've always dreamed of, that they wanted to create for their customers? What should they look like? How would they work? And that's what I do with Salesforce. And really, my job today, after all this, it's been a long history. So sorry about that, but it's kind of reached the convergence of, at least in my mind, it's brought design and strategy together finally at the core, saying that if you want to unlock uh, value for your organization today, I believe it more than any other time before, that design is the way to do it. Because if you want to increase the value of your customer base today, you can't do that without understanding your customers from their point of view and designing experiences that enhance that value. So that's my job, really, to evangelize this point of view in Salesforce, outside Salesforce, everywhere.
Well, what was interesting about your entire journey was a candid confession where you shared that you got bored of screen at one point in time, and demonstrates that experimentative way to actually reaching where you've reached till date. One of the other terms that you mentioned, was this term called as innovation, and I personally think it is one of the most abused terms, in the modern business world. And there's so many interpretations out there. What is your perspective on what is innovation?
You may be right there. And for me, I like to make things very simple for me so that I can actually work with them. It's like, if you have a complex machinery to work with, then you're struggling with the machinery itself before you create anything with it. So my definition, or my working definition, let's call it that, for innovation is simple. It's when you do something for somebody else, they get some value out of it by using it or having it or whatever it is. And after some time, you are motivated and they are motivated to increase the value that they get out of it, out of that same thing or doing that same thing. Where is that value increment going to come from? How do you create that value increment for the people that you're trying to benefit with whatever you're doing? That's the purpose of innovation. There are many ways and means, and people get, I guess what people are talking about when they have multiple definitions for innovation or multiple descriptions, I think they're talking about the ways and means, which could be many, really. I mean, there's no one way to do innovation or to innovate. So I'm sure when they're talking about these multiple ways, and they may be using some of them, or more proficient in some of them. But the goal for me is or the purpose of why innovation, it's really that. It's about, if there's a service that's solving a need for me today and I'm getting some value out of it, how can that value be increased? And why do we care about increasing value? I think that's, value is the center of relationships. So if you want to have a relationship, and this is in pretty general, right, even in terms of two people, if you think of relationships, what grows or what drives stronger relationships, it's a continuous exchange of value. And the increments really help both parties actually cement that relationship and build on that further. So in the end, I think everybody wants better relationships, including people with businesses, businesses with businesses, all these entities, us with nature as well. For example, now we are looking at a multi-stakeholder vision. And if you want better relationships, you want continuous incremental value exchange. And that increment is really where innovation can help. There are multiple ways to do that, including the way that we follow, that I have, probably myself, and then everybody else, including you, whatever the students are learning, etc.
So, it's no secret, Soumitra, that innovation is difficult for well established companies. In fact, by and large, they are better executors and innovators, and most succeed less through game changing creativity than by optimizing their existing business. The question that I have is that when innovation at such large companies is typically a challenge due to their sizes, how companies keep up pace with it? How do they keep still innovating and going forward with it?
Excellent question again. Companies by design, once they get bigger, they get bigger when they get more established. And the idea of being established is that you figure out what you make, for whom are you making it, and what is the best way to get it, and the most efficient way for you to get what you made into the hands of the people you made it for, and then close that loop. Right? That's the process that a company, when it's formed, is trying to explore for itself. And then once it's discovered the best or the most optimum way to do that, then it's all about repeating that and then building on that, scaling that, etc. And that's when we say that a company is established, because then you can look at the size and the history and the time it took for it to get there, and its knowledge of that process and the market, etc. And that's what we say are established companies. And now with this, the natural kind of imbalance is going to be that it's going to be very hard for these companies to change their well-oiled machine to start doing something else, right? And that's where the struggle comes from. And the obstacles are many, in terms of it's there's people already, because once you've become big and you've scaled and replicated this optimum process so many times, you've essentially expanded the number of people who are vested in that process, right? Not only, I'm not talking about just investors, I'm talking about employees also, I'm talking about the management, I'm talking about customers themselves to a great extent, or the partners that you have, maybe retailers or channels. So you have this whole complex machinery with so many different people in place that was optimized for a specific way of doing business that worked. And if you have to change that, you can imagine the amount of struggle you're going to face there, in terms of just dealing with people and change, right? And that's really where I think uh, the inertia comes in from for most of these organizations. Where is the solution? So it's always going to be difficult. There's no way around it. I think if the idea is that innovation is going to be simple for large organizations at some point, I think that point is pretty far away. It's going to be challenging, because that's the nature of large organizations. You can't change that. What you can do is you can speed up, you can reorganize uh, things and mindsets within the organization to shorten that time and increase the traction. And that's where I think a lot of organizations today are using you know different ways of working, different technology. And when I say different ways of working, agile and scrum and all these different ways of working together, collaborative work, are becoming more and more important and widespread in not just software organizations. So you can see agile, talk about agility and agile ways of working in almost any industry today. And that's because if you have people working together, you automatically create the environment for dialogue, discussions, and that change management and mindsets, mindset fusion, etc. All the ingredients and the space, you create that space for that to happen. And that's what really catalyzes from a process or the way of working perspective. So agile is one. And obviously having technology, the right technology, helps as well. And one of the reasons why companies today are faster at innovating than they were maybe 10 years back or 15 years back is because of a new way in which they are architected from a technology standpoint, where a lot of their systems are now in the cloud. Everything is probably driven by APIs, uh, which is actually systems talking to each other uh, online, or connected systems talking to each other. And this was, and to change anything, all you have to do is change one part and make it talk to the other, and you don't have to do it on premise where you have to actually turn on some switches and install some software. You can just do it on the cloud and not have to deal with all of that. So what it does is it makes technology more agile, or companies more agile technologically as well, to think of something and implement it in a very short time frame as compared to what it would have taken 15 years back to do that, and to experiment a lot more, because now technology is, they can start looking at technology as material like I do, to shape and form and iterate through based on reactions from the market, and they can do that faster and learn faster as well. And I think that's really what I see is happening. And also in terms of being organized, you can see many large companies today, and COVID is a great example. I think some very, very large companies today have been incredibly fast and intentional in bringing out or reopening themselves, their operations, their shop, their stores, their, their channels and services to customers within a very short time. If we had a COVID like scenario 15 years back, I think it would have we would have still been all shut down. Right, today we are in within 2 months, you have car companies selling cars online, real estate companies selling houses with virtual tours, etc., all that within 2 months. So imagine, I think it's not, they're not as slow as we thought they were, or we think they are in innovating. I think that is increasing, and it's mainly because of these couple of factors: agile technology, changing mindsets, and also an ability to sense where the market is. I think the conversations with customers are increasing. Companies are able to listen a lot more and better at what's happening in the demand side, and then take decisions that are aligned with that.
Did you know Salesforce was named as world's most innovative company by Forbes 4 times in a row from 2011 to 2014? Absolutely. In fact, that's quite well put, because innovation is complex. It's a company-wide endeavor and it requires cross-cutting practices and processes to structure or organize and encourage it. So while you spoke about innovation and usage, you also spoke about technology. One of my question says, what are some of the significant upcoming trends in user interface? Because we now see the action moving beyond screens, which is websites and apps, to TV messaging apps, voice interactions, interactive experiences anywhere in terms of location. So what do you think are some of the significant trends?
I can speak a little about what is giving rise to these trends instead of starting from the specific trends. I think one principle that has always been true is that we look at technology, or technology is meaningful because it reduces effort. Wherever you see effort between a user and a system of any kind, I think that's an opportunity where somebody must be doing something to reduce that effort. And if you look at this as a principle, then you can see many examples of this. So in terms of the whole rise of voice, where 15 years before, or maybe let's go like historic times, typing was easier than writing, and at some point even typing became very effortful. So what's next after typing? And then you had swiping, and then even swiping became effortful on the smartphone, etc. And then what's easier than swiping? It's actually just talking, right? And there could be something that comes up later because talking becomes more effortful. So I think that's that's the real genus of the trends, that it's about making everything, all aspects, every aspect of our life easier, effortless. um, and so today we are at Voice, we are, think about effort in terms of visiting places and things like that. So you have interfaces that are catering to that. I just spoke about VR, uh, and these virtual tours, etc., that, experiences that people are able to have at home. And you have automotive companies, you have real estate companies, you have holiday companies, hotels using that to give people the experience at their homes without having them to leave home and come to a dealership. And that's the effort bit, because what was not so effortful, what was considered not so effortful 10 years back, in terms of, hey, just visit a dealership, it's right next to my house. Today that seems effortful as well, even if it's like 500 meters from my house, right? Nobody wants to go there. So companies are bringing that to our homes through these new interactions and interfaces. So that's the VR part. I think there's a lot over there. Think about IoT, and a lot of the interface today is invisible interface. There's no interaction required from the user. Devices are talking to each other. Think of a simple interaction like your washing machine breaks down and you have to find the service number and just call that number or go to that website and raise a ticket for that washing machine. Compared to 10 years back, when you had to do so much to get your washing machine fixed and serviced, this is super simple, super easy, or you would think that. But today people are not willing to do that as well. What people expect is that when the washing machine breaks down, it calls up the service center by itself. Why do I need to do anything, right? And go through that whole process of going online, filling a form, etc. Nobody wants to do that. So again, removing effort is driving that trend where devices can self-diagnose, contact, and you can see that technology coming into cars already. I mean, it's already here in India. You can experience that in cars, in some domestic appliances. You can see that in elevators in buildings, for example, where they self-diagnose themselves, and so you're never out of an elevator. So IoT and connected devices, another trend around that. There's this whole thing about augmented reality, which is, first there was a lot of effort in going out and finding information and looking through books. That was simplified by Google by giving everything to you in a computer, in a single screen on your laptop. Now people are wondering, why do we need to put in the effort to keep staring at a screen and take out the phone from our pocket every time we need something? Why don't I have it on demand just in front of my eyes whenever I need it? And that's really the Google Glass family of, or the Geo Glass now I should say, family of technology, which is removing that effort in terms of getting information in context in front of your eyes without, with almost no effort, or removing the effort that existed in terms of even getting your mobile phone out of your pocket to look at the screen. So I'm sure there are a lot. So and that's my point. That today, because technology, there are so many different kinds of technologies, and it's become so easy to kind of start experimenting with these technologies. There may be millions of trends or millions of things that people are trying, but the whole intention is centered around removing effort.
So, Soumitra, in the digital age, the pace of change has gone into hyper speed. And obviously, companies must get these strategic, creative, executional, and organizational factors right to innovate successfully. We were just offline talking about how you guys are working in the studio, and a layer of how you think is action towards some of these trends. Could you share with us more on that?
You're right in noticing that speed has become essential, and also I think coupled with speed, I think why speed is essential is also because the world has become more dynamic, the context has become more dynamic, and that's why speed has become so essential in responding to that to those dynamics. And what I mean is, as information is able to travel faster because everybody is connected, movements and behaviors are able to travel faster than ever before. So something that's happening in China today as a behavior in some small pocket, it doesn't take long for it to, come to India and start igniting some movement in a village in India. And you can think about how that happens through TikTok, for example. And if that's happening, and that's the speed of change at which the there's social change happening at that speed, uh, it only makes sense that companies need to develop that muscle of speed to be able to respond to that change in society. And you see that I think retail is a great example where you have hyper growth apps such as TikTok, for example, where and it's not just about that particular app, but that format and the whole idea behind it that's so vital, that you have so much engagement across the world in such a short amount of time, and how that is really shaping consumer behavior in terms of how they discover information, brands, uh, how they create desire on these platforms, or how desire gets created on these platforms, etc. And how, on the other side, you have companies who are now seriously looking at how they can engage with that audience on these platforms, right? Something that and contrast this with 20 years back or 15 years back, when the only platform was the internet. And for engaging on the internet, companies only had to worry about like having a web page, right? And move down a decade, and you have a new challenge of companies having to engage on Facebook, the social media. But now there's like these whole other different platforms, and the previous ones have not gone away. So if you look at um, the challenge in front of companies to now engage with their customers, I think it's just the context is shifting, and it's so dynamic that companies have to stay on top of what is the next thing that's going to come that I need to be prepared for and know about and be ready to engage my customers on. So that speed is very important, and that's something that we talk a lot about with our customers as well, because it's really top of mind. And often, where we add value as innovators or designers is also to help companies understand where are their audiences today, right? How are they engaged, where are they, how are they engaging on those channels, and how can companies in turn use that insight to create and capture more value for themselves. So um so I think, yes, so change is happening, it's accelerating, and which is why the response from companies needs to accelerate as well. And this change is really coming from today from the outside in, because the outside world is environment is changing. And that's great news for anybody in the design innovation, outside in, people who have an outside focus more than an internal focus, because their job today is more relevant and more in demand than ever for companies to really leverage, to to sense early, to predict in some cases, and continue to stay on top of this change by speeding up their response.
Great. And moving towards, while you spoke so much about technology, certain trends and things that we should look forward to. At Avantika University, we operate on this philosophy of designeering, where we see the world of design and engineering blending. The question that I have is, how has the collaboration of these two um, help to create a different experience for the customers?
Design has always been about, it's like the sangam, right? It's that sangam is actually design. And if you think about it, And that's what I said at the beginning. I think what I was meaning with that was that in our day-to-day jobs and work, that is exactly what we do. We bring people from different disciplines together and get them to align on what's really required to be done, and then chart a way and a execution plan to make that happen. That's really the role of design. So when you say designeering or design and engineering, I think that's a great synthesis right there. And I would add to that by saying that there's also a huge synthesis happening already in terms of design and management, design and business strategy, design and sustainability, design and social sciences, design and ethics. All these different fields, there's a synthesis, not just limited to engineering. And the key to understand there is, today more than ever, every product or everything that we use is an amalgamation of thoughts and ideas and concepts from these multiple disciplines. So if you look at healthcare as a system today, you can find ethical problems there. You can find engineering problems there. You can find business and strategy problems there. You can find uh, cultural problems there. You can find legal problems there. And really, all those issues have come together and created the healthcare system the way it is today. So if you as a designer have to improve on that system, it's essential that you be able to kind of understand these disciplines to the extent that you are able to work with them and align with them and them themselves to what's really important. In this case, we center everything around, who is this healthcare system serving and what are they looking for really in terms of the outcome. So that becomes the anchor for the whole collaboration. And then the designeering part that you're talking about, I would expand that to all these different facets that come together in creating that service that ultimately has to deliver that outcome. So it's great that designeering is a focus area. I think it's really relevant. I think that is a big part of day-to-day work and our purpose as designers, and keep expanding that with the other areas that are anyway a part of the world that we are creating.
That's absolutely amazing insights into how do you see the worlds blending. Thank you so much, Soumitra, for doing this with us. We're glad that you joined us at Avantika Designeering series, and I'm sure that our listeners will have a lot of take home from your insights.
It was my pleasure, Rohit. Thank you for having me. I hope that I could share something that sticks with people and helps you think about how you want to create value and give back to the world from your profession and your work. I always enjoy these interactions, and I'm very accessible to anybody if they have any questions after listening to this.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.